to the rhythm, catching every beat. Together we embrace the futures at our feet. The futures at our feet.
Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of the Edgy Futurist podcast. This is episode 298 on the countdown to the big 300. Yeah, an exciting time for us to get to that big number of 300. It is the morning after, or the week after Edgy Futurist Uprising 2025, but we're recording it beforehand. So it's that Schrodinger's cat thing, Steve, where we're recording it beforehand. Where are we in the future?
Where are we? How old are we? What day is it? Where about? Yeah, no idea. But maybe that's just old age. Maybe it's nothing to do with Schrodinger's cat. And when we're recording, maybe that's just old age, everybody. So, but yeah, we're in the thick of it. We're out of the thick of it, and life's always busy. Isn't that just being an adult, maybe though?
Absolutely it is. And we've got another episode, and we're really, really pleased to be joined in the studio already with someone who many of you will have seen recently as a key figure in an announcement that's come out of the DFE, and in partnership with the Learning Trust that he's involved with. But more importantly, that's not the only thing, and we're going to get to hear all about what is happening at the Chiltern Learning Trust and some of the cool things that our guest has been involved with. Christian, it is wonderful for you to join us. Christian Turton, can you just tell us a little bit about you and the role that you are currently undertaking?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. Really excited to be on episode 298. It's amazing what you guys have been doing with these podcasts. So I'm the EdTech Lead at Chiltern Learning Trust. So we are a trust currently around 17 schools, but getting bigger. Many kind of around Luton, Central Beds and Bedfordshire, and all we're kind of different kind of demographics and different kind of aims, but all kind of working together. Really, we call ourselves a family trust. We kind of and that's really kind of the way we work together in terms of all the schools and the teachers and things like that. So I'm really pleased to kind of join the trust last September, and had an amazing kind of year over the last year, getting to know people within the trust, and of course kind of going on to work on these DFE materials as well. And I've worked in EdTech for on and off in various different roles for quite a long time now. So it's great to be doing something that I love, and working with some great people.
So obviously, before we step into the DFE and the work, because that's obviously a wide scale innovation piece, but just maybe day to day running of innovation, EdTech, digital, and all that kind of thing. You might have the title of digital, you might have the title of innovation. There's many of those titles banded about, but innovation isn't one person. So what does that look like collectively in terms of the number? And also maybe what does that look like in terms of scale up? I know you told us a little bit about the trust there. What does that look like in regards to the size and scale of numbers of staff compared to, you might say, oh, we've got a big team, but actually in the grand scheme of things, it might be a reasonably small team compared to the size and scale of your organisation, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the trust was pretty well set up in terms of leading that kind of innovation. And previously, you'll know Emma Darcy, who's does amazing work in this area, was leading there, and there's some really great things set up. So, for example, every school has a technology for learning leader, and that's really key. And also they have a link into either they're a member of SLT or a link into someone in SLT there. So they are able to kind of affect change in those schools. I'd say that as a trust, we've got a really clear vision for what we want to do with digital, and a huge part of it is around equity in lots of different ways, and particularly around what it can provide for all learners with all different needs, and really looking to personalise that learning. So that's been a big part and a particular push in the last year, both in just general teaching, but also for technology. But yeah, so every school has a Tech for Learning leader. We've got a central team of around 50 people. There's doing various different things, but I'm kind of the EdTech lead, and then, like I said, Tech for Learning leads in all of those schools as well. and very much working together. My job involves travelling around to the schools on a regular basis, going in, seeing what's happened, and it depends on the school, the kind of support that I'm offering. So I might even be going into a classroom, helping to deliver something, delivering CPD, and the next minute I might be working with a member of SLT to do their strategy for the next 2 years. So yeah, it's really varied and really responsive to what the schools need.
That's cool. So before you got into that role, you said that you've worked in EdTech a while, and I know that you've got a story before that as well. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I started teaching in early 2000s. First job, started teaching music. So teaching music in South Bristol. And if you know Bristol, you've got some of the most probably the most affluent areas in the country there, but also some of the most deprived areas as well. So where I was teaching was kind of in the latter of those two. Regularly coming to work on a Monday morning to have burnt out cars next to my classroom on the field and things like that, and also some quite disengaged students as well. We got some funding as part of a program to build something called a city learning centre, so it's quite a significant amount of funding, and we got a suite of Apple Macs back when it was going from OS 9 to OS 10, long time ago, showing how old I am. But what we found is that it really engaged, especially a lot of those learners that were really just switching off from learning. We did a lot of creative media projects, and I particularly could have worked on a lot of music technology, and that had a really big impact on some of those students who were quite kind of disengaged and not coming into school, and actually had an impact on attendance. So ran quite a lot of projects around that. After that, through the City Learning Centre network, I went to Luton, to what was called e-learning at Luton in 2004. And worked on what at the time was some really innovative projects, a lot about creative media, creative music technology. So we had a recording suite there, and gradually kind of applied that, supported schools to apply that across the curriculum. So we were working with about 50 schools in Luton to do some projects that at that time were really quite innovative, and supporting those schools to make use of technology, and kind of bringing that in as things developed. And really moved then into using technology more widely. Computing curriculum came in as well, so I got involved in supporting that in Luton. So I was in Luton for about 13 years, and all the time doing some teaching as well. So I was doing some teaching for the schools, qualifications as well. I did quite a lot of work with Apple, worked with some one-to-one schools as an Apple professional learning specialist, and then went off, did some of those Apple professional learning specialist kind of work for a while, and then joined the London Connected Learning Centre, where we're working with Sarah Horrocks, who you may have heard of. They produce something called the Connected Learning Newsletter, which is a really great newsletter, looks at AI and things as well. And when I was there, I got to do some great projects, working in South London, kind of Lambeth area, a lot around technology, some projects around one-to-one, quite a lot about literacy and technology as well as some kind of bigger projects. So we worked with the Jordanian government to write a course about EdTech, which was translated into Arabic and released, and 30,000 teachers in the Middle East did that, and got a really high efficacy rating, which is quite a really interesting project to work on, and actually look at that global side of things as well. And then from that went to Sandringham School in St Albans, and did some great projects there as well. We of course had lockdown whilst I was there. Then there were things like the EdTech demonstrator program as well that I kind of worked with there. So lots of different projects kind of working with schools, but always kind of working around EdTech and technology for learning, and also computing as well. So I was lead for the computing hub at Sandringham School as well. So we did quite a lot of work there, kind of regionally, as part of the NCCE. Always working with either learning with or about technology, really, and looking for the opportunities to make a difference. And as I said, really passionate about the opportunities it gives for equity, and particularly the opportunities to for kind of support those learners with special needs as well. And really kind of focused a lot on that over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, particularly, and the tools kind of available for that. So that's kind of a bit of a rundown of some of the things that I've done. And I was really excited to be able to go to Chiltern Learning Trust and focus mainly on what's my passion, which is EdTech and AI.
Do you think that actually through the work that you've been doing and all the project work previously, that actually is really beneficial in the multi-academy trust, where ultimately you've said your work is really diverse, the type of work that you're doing, the projects you're doing, so ultimately you're used to working in project silos anyway, so actually it's just carrying on that, but just in a more managed way, rather than I'll do it here and then I'll apply it here in different organisations. It's the same vision at the end, but all of those projects are feeding into one vision as an organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things I've found in the last few jobs as well, working on various different projects, as you say, but all working towards the same thing. And our schools are all different stages. So we have schools joining us that, quite fresh to the trust, and we support them in different ways. So absolutely, kind of working towards one vision, but giving those different types of support really important. And I think that's kind of the work that a lot of people work. I know both of you probably work in that way as well. Have lots of different projects you're working on at the same time, and that is kind of the way that work's going. And
my life is multiple projects, Christian.
You do everything, Ben. I was like, oh, he does that as well. But having that, I think it's called a portfolio kind of career, isn't it?
Or a mess. A mess.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Mine's a mess, not a portfolio.
Okay, yeah. But I think that's really important. And I sometimes think that teachers aren't really attuned to that's kind of quite often the world of work that aren't always, I'm not saying necessarily in our trust, but more widely. Sometimes they're thinking about kind of the more traditional kind of jobs that people are going into, but more and more it is that is the kind of work that people are going into. So, and I think technology is such a big part of that. It's really important that people are thinking about how they can prepare students for that kind of world of work.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. I was with another trust on Monday delivering an AI a conference, and I always tell the story about Ella, but I'm not going to go into too much because anybody who's listened to the podcast at least once will have heard the story of Ella and all of those kind of things. But I think it's really interesting in regards to, and the story that I told was, how can we prepare young people in the world in which they want to absorb and ultimately learn, if we always make it about ourselves and the way that maybe we were developed and how we learned and all those kind of things, and ultimately that we have to maybe just shift our mindset to make it about them rather than actually us as educators. And I think that's one of the challenges. And maybe how do you do that, I suppose, in your role, but Chiltern as a whole, in regards to actually preparing young people for the future and tech, and making sure that teachers are enabled, even if there's a resistance and maybe that's not their first choice or hasn't been. How do you shift that mindset to then go, you know what, you have to do it now. There's not a choice. It's there, and students expect it. It's not an add-on. Students expect it now in their learning and in everyday life.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a bit of a mind shift as well. But we've got a lot of things. So we've got things like Aspirations Hub, which is not about the technology bit, but it is about having students have a certain number of kind of interactions with employers and the world of work, and seeing what's out there and kind of the opportunities that are there. So that's really important. Having a look at what the real world of work is, and it's quite an eye opener for teachers as well as students, I think. I think that's been really important. But just also trying to think about how we can shift from using technology in a way to support what we want to achieve in the classroom, which is really important. That kind of supporting our pedagogy, but actually thinking about how we can start to shift to the students leading the use of technology, and that's happening. One particular primary school that I've speaking to teachers of the day, and students are now selecting the tools that they use to express, to show what they've learned, and they're able, they're really confident in doing that. And there's many things behind that, being the one-to-one program, for example. So every student having their device set up how they want it, and the tools that they want to, that they need to be able to do that. But that's ultimately what we need, in the world of work. We're having to select tools, we're having to create content and things like that. So seeing year 6 pupils doing that is great. So so that's really, really key, is kind of supporting with that, as well as just supporting them to be digitally literate and AI literate as well, and understanding the opportunities there, as well as some of the risks.
And that obviously brings us really nicely into some of the recent work that you've been working on. I say recent, but I know that this has been something that has been stewing for a long time, and we've all been going, oh, when is something going to come out in the UK? Everybody's been talking about what's happening in the US, what's happening in China, what's happening.
Yeah.
When's it going to come out in the UK? And I bet you've been thinking, it's coming. I just can't tell you it's coming yet. It's not been released yet. It's been working on it. And so one of the big announcements in the UK on the 10th of June, it was released to the public, wasn't it, is that the DfE released some new guidance around generative AI in schools and a whole host of toolkits that are tied to it, which I know that you and some of the team at Chiltern Learning Trust and broader, some wonderful humans, many of whom have been on the podcast, Scott Hayden, Al Kingsley, Bucky Youssef, Matthew Weems, loads and loads of them have been involved. I know I've missed some people, Aaron Patchin, Trudy Barrow, all them people, all been involved in this. Sorry if I forgot you. I do love you. Sorry. But Christian, could you just maybe tell us a little bit about what those DfE guidance is around, and then we can talk about how well that's been responded, because I think that's really positive.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is something we were working on for about 4 months with the DfE and the Chartered College of Teaching. And so the DfE vision was that there were going to be there's two toolkits, which there are. One is for teachers, one is for leaders to work through, and they're really everything all the fundamental things that schools need to know about AI to use it safely and effectively. And we know a lot of schools didn't know where to get started and were holding off, perhaps banning AI whilst they were getting used to it. So these materials are really kind of just going over, all of the risks, making sure what you need to have in place. But there's just getting started, some examples of how to prompt, also demystifying AI, and understanding a bit of kind of how it works. So they're in the format of 4 PowerPoint presentations, but with videos linked to that you can watch, or there's some transcripts you can read, and then there's a leadership toolkit that's separate, which is kind of one PowerPoint that contains an audit as well. And to accompany it, the Chartered College of Teaching released a load of case studies and a copy of their impact journal, a digital version of that, with lots of people writing about different opinions around AI as well. So that's kind of to supplement that. And they've also got an online test that you can take and get a certificate for having completed those. So that's kind of what they are. The idea is you can download them and work through them individually, or you can download them and deliver them in school and kind of personalize them a bit for the school as well. So if you're planning a September inset on AI, and if you haven't already booked Ben or Steve, because there's only one of each of you, then you might, or one of the other wonderful people, and you're stuck you want to do some AI training, then these are really good materials to download and to kind of deliver in school or work through in your school. So yeah, that's the purpose, and they're designed to work alongside. There's lots of other training programs as well, so they're not the final word in kind of everything. They're starting materials, and then we know there's loads of other courses as well to take you that step further as well. Works really. Do you want to talk a bit about how I developed them as well? So it was really important to the Department for Education that we engage kind of with the sector really widely. So and that was great, and that's one of the Chartered College of Teaching obviously had loads of connections through the sector, and obviously there's a lot of people that I kind of know through networks and so on. Trudy Barrow was kind of on the author team. You've mentioned her already, but she knows everybody in the AI world. So that was great getting her. I think she grabs Matthew Weems at Bet and dragged him into the recording studio to do an interview and things like that. So, but yeah, it's really important that it wasn't just the idea of a few people, but that we engaged with the sector more widely. So, we invited some people to record case studies, and we used some of those in the materials just to make sure we've got those, like a range of voices in there. We did a survey with 500 teachers responded to, and that was a range of different schools there. And it was really interesting seeing what people said in that. So, for example, 60% said that they didn't know how they were allowed to use AI, whether or not they were allowed to use AI, or how they were allowed to use AI in school. Others, about half said they'd never received any training on it. And yeah, similar kind of number actually hadn't even used AI as well. So we kind of knew that there was there was a real need there for those materials that would just get people started, understanding what it is, and getting started with it, because you need to take those first steps and feel confident that these are the things you need to do. So I hope the materials do that, and yeah, really pleased that we've got so many different voices in there. And so far, been really well received as well in terms of feedback, and but really looking forward to hearing what people do with them and the kind of difference they make, hopefully.
I suppose I don't know how much you can share. Obviously, the DFE will be maybe just you might have had to just let them know that you're attending. They often do, and everything else in terms of a podcast. But I think the question, I suppose, is AI has been developing and has fast evolving, for, I think, the definition of artificial intelligence was 50s. Was it 56 or 67?
Yeah, Alan Turing, wasn't it? Yeah, in this speech.
Yeah, but I think that it was a group of people that were working in a college in the south of England that came together, and I actually heard that last week, in a conversation with Donald Clark and all those kind of things, and it was a conversation around what that looks like. I don't know if you know, but the person who coined the phrase artificial intelligence straight away said that he wished he'd never called it artificial intelligence. He wished it would have been something different, because it feels artificial rather than actually something that's aided by
John MacArthur.
Yeah, and all those kind of things. But I think, so AI has been there for such a long period of time in different guises. Obviously, now it's come to the forefront and really hit home into education because it's free for a lot and has really, I suppose it's a simple tool, in terms of just that prompt. It's quick to pick up and everything else. But I know the government are trying to put their stamp, trying to put their measure. Obviously, we've had a change of government that have then tried to put AI at the forefront. Do you feel that actually over the last 4 months that has seen a shift in terms of the work that you needed to do and the place that they saw these toolkits to actually say, you know what, we need to put some parameters in. We want to stop people blocking it. We want people to use it, but we need some to make sure that they're aware of the guardrails positively of some of the challenges, but also some of the things that it really can help with. Not just the stuff of, yeah, it can create a lesson plan, brilliant. The question is, should we always be doing a lesson plan anyway? It's actually, what does it do? And was that the directive of the DFE to actually say, you know what, we want it to be pushed into education. We want them to be using it, but we want them to be aware of the why, the what, and the how. And is that where the conversation was led and started, do you think?
So yeah, it's really, so I guess, so in the leadership toolkit there is a line there, and it is about if you decide to use AI in education. So I think that there's kind of that policy position of they don't want to force people. At the same time, you get an impression of what the Department of Education might be like in terms of their kind of understanding. And what I found is that the team that we worked with really did have a really good understanding of the opportunities, and they hadn't just been working in silo. They'd been out to events, and a lot of events actually, to kind of hear what's been happening. They'd been to visit places to see how people had kind of set things up and were working, and just had a real opportunity, feeling for the opportunities that there are for AI. So I was really impressed with that, actually, and the understanding that they have of course, they want to make sure that it's done very safely and that they're really clear about the risks and the guardrails that need to be in place and things like that. And lots of conversations about making sure it's not bypassing the thinking, both in terms of teachers and if students use it as well, but thinking about the place for it. But certainly just things like personalising learning and thinking about that opportunity there, and it feels very pro innovation in terms of that. So I think that I was really impressed with that, and yeah, how the things that they're looking at.
I think it's that idea of that phrase that we've been using around this is that considered disruption. We know it's disruptive. We know it's a technology that's very different than other technologies, and that choice and agency. One of the things that we talk about and has come out in this year's trends booklet is around agency with guardrails, and that we need to give more agency to staff and to students and to leaders. And everybody's saying that, but we're not just giving free rein. The example we used in the trends booklet was around driving a car. Like we don't just give somebody a set of keys and say crack on. But we don't just say that there's going to have to be somebody sat in a passenger seat for the entirety of your driving career. Like we've got to understand that agency has to happen, but with guardrails and safety mechanisms. And it feels a little bit like what these toolkits have done is opened up a door for people to go, we want you to use this safely. These are some suggestions that it could be used for. This is how some people are using it. But, and I've watched this in a few of the videos and seen some of the resources where it's very, very clear that we need to have context, and everybody's talking about context. If you just try and replicate what Scott Hayden's done at BCOT or what Matthew's done in Bucharest or what Trudy's done in the work that she's worked in technology and try and place that into what you do in science, it won't work. You've got to contextualize it and then pick appropriate opportunities to do it. So it's not necessarily that the DFE and others are saying use AI if you want to. They're making the decision of like some of that contextualization comes into this about when's an appropriate time to use it and when's not. And that ties also into the other bit that I just heard you say about you're not wanting to do the thinking for us. And there's a huge worry. Lots of people are talking about it, all that MIT reports being misquoted as well about whether it, and it is totally misquoted because if you read it, it doesn't say anything of what some people are saying. But does it outdo the like outsource your thinking? And none of this is what we're suggesting here at all.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about that paper separately, but it's very frustrating, isn't it? The headlines that come along with that, and actually, what it actually talks about is using your brain first and then LLM later is one of the most effective kind of yeah. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right with what you said there, Ben, and I think they are they're saying decide on what's right for your setting. And ultimately you've got to do what's best for the student, going to be best for the students. But yeah, not making those judgments about student work, those big judgments, but not automating those, but really getting starting to get fluent with how you can use those tools and the place of those tools and blending them. I've always kind of quite like the term blended learning when it comes to traditional kind of EdTech, and I think that's kind of the approach really. But I'm really excited. I know that there is they're very much looking at personalised learning and the Department of Education as well, and I think there's huge opportunities there as well, and just to personalise things for students. I did bring up the policy paper actually because we were talking about them being kind of pro innovation in a way. There's quite a powerful statement there. It does say, if used safely, effectively, and with the right infrastructure in place, AI can support every child and young person, regardless of their background, to achieve at school and college and develop the knowledge and skills they need for life. So that's quite a strong kind of pro AI statement in a way in that, and that's just in the generative AI policy paper from the Department for Education. Some of those risks we talked about, and again, Steve, you were talking about intelligence and things like that, and we've got that great word that's a few people have been posting around, that anthropomorphization, which is a word that's taken me a while to learn how to say. But that idea of talking about it as a human, as a person, and that could lead to that attachment and that wrong mental model for students to think about. But actually, understanding a bit of how it works, and if students understand that as well, that they're going to be better off as well, and understand a bit more about the capability of it. So yeah, that was important to get those kind of things in there. We were really pleased as well. Rose Luckin as well at the start of the leadership toolkit, talking about that balance there as well. So yeah, it was great. And yeah, I mean, take a look at the videos if you haven't, or if anyone listening, if you haven't already, because there's yeah, like you say, lots of different voices in there as well.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I think in terms of, I'm not going to spend too much time going backwards to the MIT paper in regards to taking away people's ability to think, exams and all of that, and ultimately what we're doing anyway. Does ring the bell of what did you think we were doing anyway for a long period of time without AI? But I think it's really interesting in regards to stepping into the videos, and as it grows and as you developed and as you shared, obviously people will have picked it up straight away. It was published and it came out, but ultimately probably don't want to delve into the whole conversation of how polarizing social media can be, but it'd be really interesting to kind of think about, you mentioned the response per se in terms of the UK's adoption to it, for whether people agree or disagree is perception and how information is received, I guess. It's all personalized and everything else, and it's how people perceive their views of education. But maybe let's start with the positives. How have you seen people using it? Have you had any feedback? Have you seen greater connectivity from you, the people involved in the videos and the project, to come in and open out some silos to actually collaborative working in regards to influencing a ruffle and a ripple effect of AI use beyond that? And then I'm sure we can talk about negativity at some point, but let's just focus on the positivity in terms of how it's maybe been responded to in the UK and even further afield.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has been really positively received by yeah, a range of different people as well, and quite often people who might not have been thinking too much about AI already. So I've had some people message, quite a few people who run initial teacher training programs as well. So who have said I haven't really known how to integrate AI into initial teacher training. Thank you so much, because these materials are going to be really useful for that. So I think that's really nice that those people are kind of getting involved. And I think, because we've got such a range of people involved, that when they're posting about it, there's been this thing of people posting their screenshots of them in it around social media as well. And then quite often people who didn't know they were involved in it are kind of seeing that as well. I know that I've had a couple of messages from head teachers where they might be with head teacher groups, and they've used some of the materials to start that conversation or take their conversation forwards about how they're going to be using AI. And actually, I've done quite a few head teacher group, been invited to quite a few of these head teacher group meetings just to talk about the materials and what they can do with them as well. So I think that's really positive. I think particularly those people who just didn't know where to go with it have now have some guidance and some way to go forward, because I think many people were stuck. So yeah, I had some really great feedback on that. I think, yeah, and I think there will always be negativity, and I suppose yes, it's always it's really healthy to have a discussion about everything to do with AI, isn't it? And there's always going to be people who aren't so keen in it. I think, have had listened to some opinions around it, and quite often I think some of the fears are around conflating what AI can do, the negative things AI can do, with actually the AI doing those things. It's humans controlling the AI. So, there was this kind of analogy that AI is a bit like bringing a colleague who isn't always accurate, could be biased, might attempt to create grooming profiles, those kind of things, into your school. Which, of course, we know it isn't at all. It's the humans that are doing that. It's the humans that are using AI in that way, and also there's lots of safeguards we can put in place. But yeah, it's how you kind of envisage those things, and the AI is not doing those things by itself. It's being controlled by humans. So I think that's some of the fear, perhaps, that's driven any of the negativity around it as well. So I think that's really interesting, and I think that's a piece of kind of educating people. I do always come back to, and I'm showing my age, but when we brought the internet into schools, and lots of people started saying how that wasn't safe. Um, I am that old, and there was a picture that I know someone who was used to share. That, I don't know if you've seen it, of the Victorian swimming lessons without a swimming pool. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's it's a teacher with students in their bathing suits, lying on grass in the playing field, trying to learn how to swim, and and apparently that's what happened if you didn't have access to some water to practice swimming in Victorian times. But I think we'd accept now that you can't teach about internet safety and being positive online and all those positive digital things without having access to digital tools and those types of things as well. I think it's very much the same with AI. We can't be just telling people what to do with it. They need to be experiencing it to develop those positive kind of attitudes towards it, and that healthy use of it. Because otherwise, students will just go and use ChatGPT to do the work for them, instead of actually understanding how it can support them in their learning.
100%, and it's about using this in a safe way, in a considered way, isn't it? We keep coming back to that. It's that considered disruption. It's thinking that, you know what, we don't want to let people loose. We're going to put safeguards in place. And our friend Matthew Weems, who again we've mentioned was involved in the project there, posted something out on LinkedIn just today. It's really about whether any of the tools that we're talking about are safe to use with children without. Are they meeting the EU AI Act safety guidance, and what do we need? We should be asking those questions, and it's not just, well, that's somebody else's job, or, well, that's a bit too technical for me, so I'll tell you what, I'll stay away from it. Steve has said something that's really resonated with me recently, and I feel like I keep using it all the time. He probably doesn't realise that he said it, but keeps talking about how we keep going on about safeguarding students, and the reason why we're worrying about technology and about AI is about safeguarding students, and that's absolutely right. That should be front and centre. But we're not just about safeguarding students now. We've got to safeguard students' future. And if we don't do something about the technology that's available, and we become that country that forgets about it, and or not just that, we become we just ignore this. What will happen? Exactly what happened with social media, which is what people are saying is the proof of it. We just ignored it and pretended it wasn't a thing. We didn't talk about it in schools, and now students have got unbridled access to it and don't know how to deal with it. And AI is worse than that because of what it does in terms of it doesn't need human input. And so, yeah, we've got to safeguard our students' future. And I think that's what I'm hearing here is that we're trying to be considered, agency with guardrails, and thinking about that. Now, obviously, as part of this, you probably have to compare against where we are against other countries and what that looks like, and what did we pick up from others in terms of developing this content. What did you find there, or what were you able to find?
Yeah, I mean, so we did find, we found out quite that obviously lots happening around the EU AI Act as well. Some really interesting things kind of happening there, and the approach of this country is slightly different to that. But yeah, in kind of gauging the sorts of things and sort of approach, it was really interesting looking at that and comparing that to what we're doing here. Obviously, the materials very closely, and they are obviously they are DFE copyright as well and things like that. So they were very much guided by the policy position that the DFE is in, as well as kind of a consulting with the sector. But yeah, we did look at some of the different areas, and it's very interesting what different areas are doing and approaching in terms of the way that tools can be used. And some countries are actually have to look at the effectiveness of schools before that company can sell into schools as well. So they are doing the kind of vetting for that. It's very different here in that there's more of that choice, but there's the guidance to kind of look at those tools initially also. So Yeah, so some conversations with those different areas. Obviously, Matthew Weems very much working in that area as well. So we were really pleased to have him kind of speak about the work that he's doing there as well. But we were very much focusing on the context of the UK in kind of putting these materials together. So and kind of that policy position of the Department for Education.
And is there and maybe this might be something that you don't measure, but I suppose in terms of that toolkit, is there a metric in regards to an outcome, an output? Is there a hope? Obviously, they know why they wanted to do it, and they know why they commissioned the work. But is it a numbers game in terms of they'd like a coverage of an amount of people that want to do it? What is the intent? We know what the intent of the actual thing was really, and it's to try and get people to understand safeguard AI and safeguard against its use positively and all those kind of things. But ultimately, what is the intended impact in regards to a metric? And and maybe this is a question for the DFL themselves, if this is successful, does it stimulate onto the next iteration and further growth of development in terms of support for educators? We talked about if in your research, I think you said 500 people that you researched. Some of them weren't even using AI. So we've got a real spectrum of people that are literally just going, I've never used it, which does surprise me, that people are still not using it. But ultimately, the type, and we've probably all done this in the conversation where, have you ever used AI before? And people go, no, I've never used AI before. Have you ever searched for a photo on your phone? And they go, yeah. It's like, have you ever been on Google Maps? And they'll go, yeah. And you go, all right, so you've used AI then. And it's all of that, it's their understanding that it's been littered and developed into their everyday life. They just didn't realise it anyway. But I suppose, go back to the point, I've rambled a little bit there. Intent, implementation, and is there a follow-on and some further investment coming, do we feel, if they get it right based on a metric?
Yeah, I think so definitely, I'm sure the DFE will be looking at kind of engagement with the materials. There was a descriptor of kind of what they were looking for, which came out with the kind of when the specification with what we needed to do. I was going to quickly try and find that, but essentially it described the kind of teachers, the different kind of people that they wanted to reach, and part of it was about reaching those people who just haven't taken that first step, and part of it was maybe people who shot ahead but hadn't considered all the safety kind of elements already. So I can't speak for the DFE, but I'd really like to see a survey around something around the impact of those, seeing how they've kind of been used. And I think it's essential, really, isn't it? I really hope that there's a good kind of next stage follow up for that. And I hope whatever it is, it could have involved so much of the sector and so many different voices as well, because I think that's always going to make it really powerful. So hopefully that approach will be used for further things. So I'll pass you on to the DFE to answer all the details. That I can't
have you thought about becoming a politician? Because that was a wonderfully political answer. Maybe that's why you got asked to do some work for the DFE, because you can answer questions in a non-committal way. I love that. And no, I do love as well how you've brought or people who've been able to bring the community together and diverse voices. I think that's really important. We probably need more of that. We do need more people in representation that are getting to share that. And again, I say it relatively regularly, just like Sammy says, Sammy White. She talks about speaking people's names in rooms that they're not in, and I think some of that will be about getting other people's voices into the space. I think one of the things that is worth just touching on quickly before we do our quickfire questions. We always finish with quickfire questions, and you might have known that, you might not have known that. We've changed them up recently, so tough. You've got to do them. I'm curious because you mentioned that you were a former music teacher, and that was the subject specialism. And just obviously, we've been talking about AI. One of the worries that comes out in people's world, whether it is or it isn't a viable one, is about whether AI is going to ruin that relationship between creativity and is it going to replace that from a music perspective and from the arts? What's your stance on that with your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and like I said, I taught music, but music technology has probably been it's something I've taught a lot. Um, Certainly in terms of like music has always adopted new technologies pretty quickly, actually, and it's sometimes been the driver for new technologies. Ever since the Beatles, I guess, really, and what I find really exciting about AI is what it can bring to the creative process. So not replacing the artists by doing the stuff for them, but I was teaching actually music tech A level last year, and one of my students downloaded the source code for this AI voice generator, and for their song generated an AI voice to sing the main kind of line in their song, like a trap song, and I had to then go to the exam board and say like, it says no AI use, but hang on, he's been really creative with that. And actually, to their credit, it was accepted because it wasn't the AI doing the work for them. He was really using it really skillfully. I think stuff like that is really exciting. There's so many amazing things that you can do there. Again, not doing the work for you, not regenerate, because we could just regenerate songs over and over again. But how can you make new sounds? How can you make things completely that haven't happened before, and drive things forward by using AI? So yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think it's great.
So, as Ben said, we always do quickfire questions, and our most recent quickfire questions have been causing our guests the most challenging. So get ready for this,
Okay,
Christian, because
great.
you're in for a treat. We've really shuffled them up. So I'll go first, Ben will come in, and then I'll finish if that's okay. So, if schools were to be judged like restaurants by how much customers actually enjoyed their experience, what would change overnight, do you think?
Learning would be much more student led, and yeah, they'd be able to make choices about about how they're learning, how they're accessing learning, and how they're showing the learning.
Love it. What's the most dangerous myth that educators tell themselves to avoid real change?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. I think probably it is they tell themselves to avoid real change. Yeah, so probably that someone's going to make that change for them, because we can see it's not been happening, and they need to be the people leading the change. Maybe is that a cop out?
It's politician's answer. Well done, Mr. Durfee.
Yeah, right.
But no, I'm only joking. No, it's good. It's good. Okay, the last one you'll be glad to hear. Okay, is if a 10-year-old asked why they'd have to go to school, what would you actually say?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Yeah, it, if the school is set up right, it's to prepare them to have prepare them for life, and whatever that means. Not just prepare them for work, but prepare them to be happy, to be to understand their emotions, and yeah, so to prepare them and help them to kind of move forward in whatever that means for that particular student. Yeah.
It's a tough one, and it's a really good answer. I really liked it, and I think it's resonated with quite a lot of guests we've had on that have
It's a
said
great
similar things.
question,
That actually, we talk. Thanks, Joe. We wrote it ourselves, so thank you very much for that. But I think it's
really,
I did. Yeah, it was brilliant. No, Ben.
It's really. Is that Ben's question? Is it?
That was Ben's question, but mine were the ones that are real. Yeah. No, Ben wrote this round. But I think what's really resonates is again, Joe, going back to the trends and everything else, we talk about in our trends that are launched officially tomorrow for this year in terms of assessing beyond grades, metrics, league tables, and all those things have become so important, or feel like they're so important, but they're just a measure of a really narrow view of things. And actually, if you were to, like you just did, get into the head of it, explaining to a 10-year-old, actually, it isn't about the grade. It isn't about that. It's actually about a real rounded, holistic education that is preparing them for life, love, loss, and everything else that comes with it. Beyond that, the happiness and the challenges in this ambiguous world, rather than just if you don't pass an exam, you're a failure. Which often is led to, and that's not all schools. Just to call it out, there's some great work being done by your trust and many schools and many educators and leaders. But actually, it's a systemic change that needs to happen. So yeah, really, really good answer. It's been a real pleasure. We'd love to have you back on and the team collectively in terms of this as it's evolved. And as actually it sees that we hopefully the snowball effect happens and a big impact on use of AI will happen across the sector on at all ages, FE, primary, secondary, and higher education, and teacher education. So we're really excited, and it's been a pleasure. Really, thank you for your time.
And thank you for everything that you guys are doing for education as well. It's amazing.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Christian. And we'll put a link to the show in the show notes to the resources. Do grab hold of them and follow Christian, find out what they're doing. That would be wonderful. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time for episode 299. And then we're down on the countdown. See you soon, everybody.
Shaping